China is the big bad wolf of the global steel industry. That's what you hear, and statistics like these, reflecting China's huge increase in steel exports and production, are used to make this point. In this, the third of our videos on the steel industry and related tariffs, we'll dive a bit deeper into Chinese steel to try to understand if the American tariffs can help solve a Chinese steel problem. In our first video, we focused on the 600% increase in productivity in steel production that seems to have had an enormous impact on steel industry employment. In our second video, we pointed out that there hasn't really been a flood of steel imports into the U.S., certainly not out of line with historical averages. In this video, we put the spotlight on China. We'll start with a full graph of Chinese steel production, the 10 years through 2017. First, note that production has leveled off in China. The rapid rate of increase of the past decade likely never to be seen again. Now we redraw the graph, this time including consumption, which, as you can see, closely tracks production. Clearly, most of China's production is used at home, which makes sense since China is a huge country growing and urbanizing rapidly. Now we'll add Chinese exports to the graph, this one as an index with 2007 as the base year. As you can see, China's exports have not only leveled off, they've fallen off to the point where they are only 13% higher than 10 years ago versus 70% higher for production. Plus, and this is key, on a percentage basis, China doesn't really export much steel. These lines represent exports to production for 4 countries. Note that Germany and Japan are both above 35%, while the US and China are around 10%, and China is actually less than the US. China is a huge country, so it exports a fair amount of steel, but on a proportional basis, China is far from being a steel export powerhouse. China's exports to the U.S. have followed a similar pattern, rising significantly, then falling again, to a level that in 2017 was actually 5% below 2010. Plus, China's exports to the U.S. never exceeded 2.5% of America's consumption and have actually fallen back to below 1%. This is hardly an amount that would disrupt the U.S. market. What about Chinese steel finding its way to the U.S. via countries that buy steel from China and then sell it to America? Looking at China's top 10 steel customers and America's top 10 steel suppliers, turns out only 2 countries are on both lists: South Korea, Vietnam. Together, those countries have never sold the U.S. more than 7% of its steel, and it was less than 4% last year. Again, 7%, not exactly a huge number. In short, to summarize, yes, China's production has increased significantly, but so has its consumption. It isn't exporting a large share of its steel, and it doesn't sell much to the U.S. directly or indirectly. It is difficult to see how China is the big bad wolf blowing away the U.S. steel industry. Now, some will say that even if China doesn't sell to the U.S., its huge overcapacity depresses prices and therefore harms the industry. That will be the topic of our next video. Thanks for watching.